Is that bad? Yes, it is. We're just going to read a statement. After a relentless and at times almost unbearable 10-year campaign, it is with a profound sadness and a deep sense of anger we learn the true scale and extent of the maternity scandal at Nottingham University Hospitals. Donna Ockenden and her review team have laid bare unsafe practices, cultural failings, racism and abhorrent leadership that, over many years, has resulted in avoidable maternal harm and baby deaths, maternal deaths, stillbirth, life-changing injuries, and profound psychological harm to mothers and birth partners. It feels like there is no aspect of maternity and neonatal services that has come out of this review unscathed. Some of the themes identified in the report are ones that we, the campaigning families, have direct and personal experience of. Our concerns were dismissed and not acted upon. We weren't told the truth about what happened, even after death. Babies were treated with an absence of dignity, and the hospital frequently failed to keep our loved ones safe. We never wanted to be campaigners. We are victims who became campaigners because those responsible for keeping mothers, babies, families safe failed to listen. The report findings and actions that Donna and her team say must happen must be treated with the utmost seriousness and implemented in full. Anything less would be a betrayal of the families whose suffering has made this review necessary. The report findings... This thorough report is the culmination of nearly 4 years' worth of work by a team of more than 200 medical specialists comprising experts, neonatologists, obstetricians, fetal medicine specialists and midwives. It is evidence-based and expert-led. It doesn't need to be considered, it simply needs to be actioned. We want to speak directly to staff of the Trust. We're horrified by what some of you have shared during the review. We recognise that some of you have been expected to work in a constant state of crisis, within a culture where bullying, intimidation and the fear of speaking up has too often felt normal. We believe that you must be properly supported, valued and empowered to provide the safe, compassionate care that future parents in Nottingham deserve. The fact that a significant number of senior staff chose not to participate in this review is appalling. You have demonstrated that maternity safety doesn't matter to you, but self-preservation does. Your failure to engage constructively and with candour in this review process is further proof that you are unfit to keep mothers and babies safe. Questions must be asked by senior leaders of the NHS and government and the regulators whether these people are fit to continue working in the NHS. A culture that resists scrutiny and accountability lies at the heart of many of the failings identified at the Trust, and it must change if meaningful improvement is to be achieved. We know that the problems are not unique to Nottingham, and the time has come for there to be a statutory public inquiry into maternity and neonatal services across England. This is because safe care can only be consistent when the full truth is known. Every family affected by failures in care deserves the truth and deserves accountability. We urge the Prime Minister to establish such an inquiry without delay.
Thank you. We must thank the former Health Secretary, the Right Honourable Sajid Javid, for commissioning this review back in 2022. Thank you for listening to us and acting. We're profoundly grateful to family and staff who have come forward to share their experiences, and to all the journalists whose investigations helped shine a light on what was happening behind the closed doors. Together, we have been instrumental in exposing the largest maternity scandal in NHS history. It should never have fallen to us to uncover the truth and force action. The responsibility for protecting patients belongs to the Trust leaders, regulators and the government. and what happens next lies firmly with them. Thank you to Donna and her amazing team who have pursued the truth with compassion, determination and absolute integrity. You have been there for families who have invariably felt ignored and dismissed. To you, we are not numbers on a page. We are people whose lives have been irrevocably altered. Your hard work has made us feel vindicated. And finally, to Donna, the Nottingham families are deeply grateful to you for your kindness, respect, and genuine care you have shown throughout this whole process. You understand that behind every statistic is a child or mother who should be here. A mum, dad, and sibling whose lives have been forever changed and who are living with unimaginable loss or lifelong consequences. And we cannot thank you enough.
Luke Shanahan, LBC. Thank you all for being here today and speaking to us. I wanted to pick up on your point about a full public inquiry, because it strikes me that wouldn't be the first, even in recent times, full public inquiry inspired by a tragedy here in Nottingham. Have you spoken to the families affected by those attacks? Is that something that you'd seek to do? How do you want to go about campaigning for that to happen?
I think it's pretty evident that we do need a full statutory public inquiry. It's very clear that all of the regulators have let us down. And when we hear today of Donna and people not giving her evidence, it's horrific. They need to be compelled to give evidence. You know, those clinicians, are they clinically safe if they don't have patient safety at their heart? No. And it's not just Nottingham. We are in contact with people from Leeds down to Plymouth. It is widespread. And my main frustration is that if you harmed or killed a child or a mother in any other walk of life, if a school pickup, there would be people held to account and people would be in jail. But for our maternity services throughout England, there is no accountability, and that is unfair.
Hi, Sean Linton, Sunday Times. Thanks all for doing this. Again, turning to the public inquiry question, I've worked with some of you for many years. We've seen this happening across the country. A public inquiry looking at trusts will achieve one thing. I'm just interested to tease out from you, is it your belief that actually a public inquiry really needs to dig into the policies and agenda that were driven by the Department for Health, NHS England, that forced trusts into certain patterns of behaviour that we're all familiar with? I'm just interested if someone could speak to that point specifically.
I think you have beautifully highlighted one of the questions for a public inquiry. Why did the leaders of Nottingham and other trusts around the country behave like they did? Was it because of policy and pressure from above, or was it that they just fancied doing that? And we don't know the answer to that, hence the need for a public inquiry, which is set to answer three questions. What happened? And we do not know what happened, because there is a lot of information missing. Why did it happen, and who is responsible? And what do we do to stop it happening again? And they're simple questions, and we're nowhere near answering them. I would like to know the answer to your question. Was it the chief executive of this trust who allowed this to happen, or was it because of pressure from the Department of Health and Social Care? And we can give you a list now of people who we say will be witnesses to that public inquiry, and none of the names will surprise you.
Hello, Amelia Salmons from Bauer Media. I wanted to direct my question to Jack and Sarah specifically. For the last month, we've told the story of Harriet Hawkins, and I just wanted to ask you why you feel it's important that the babies and mothers are remembered and the families are remembered at the heart of every single case.
I think it is very easy for people to switch into statistics and talk about if it's the largest maternity scandal, if it's not, and at the end of the day, we're just being a mummy and daddy to our beautiful daughter who was killed and should be alive. Yeah, I think it's very easy for society to also not talk about child death, because when your kid dies, no one really wants to talk about it. But when your kid dies via NHS negligence, hardly anyone wants to talk about it. And I really want to change that, and because sadly it is very common.
Shimon from Sky News, thank you for speaking with us here today. I know that you thanked Sajid Javid for commissioning this review, but since it was commissioned back in 2022, there have since been around 4 health secretaries that have succeeded him, and we're currently facing yet more political turmoil. Can you tell me how important it is that the government do not only acknowledge the findings, but also really, I suppose, pledge to real change regardless of what happens over the coming months?
Yeah, we've seen many health secretaries and potentially another one if things change soon. There's been promises from successive governments, but now we need action. We're past the point of promises now. We need things to actually change, which is why we need a public inquiry to be commissioned now. It shouldn't have taken us as harmed and bereaved families to campaign for years and years, a decade, to be able to get some answers, and now we need accountability, and that's why we need the PI.
Thank you.
You've spoken about the staff who refused to cooperate with the review. The government said that in future, if NHS staff refuse to cooperate with any other reviews, they may face up to 2 years in prison. What's your reaction to that?
Do you mind if I just comment on that? If you go back to the publication of previous reviews and previous scandals, you'll see other health secretaries' names saying exactly the same type of words. We need to hold people to account. We see nothing coming out of the position of Secretary of State that makes it different to the real life of maternity departments.
Victoria MacDonald from Channel 4 News. Given that you're pleased with the inquiry and what Donna and her team have done, does there remain anything in the report that you still think is missing, that you would have preferred to have seen more interrogated?
I think for me, the biggest thing, obviously Donna's report picks up on themes about failures from the regulators, but that's only through family kind of testimony about speaking about their engagement with such regulators. And I think, in actual fact, on a national level, I think what we're seeing here is a kind of complete breakdown of every single system and structure that should be in place to keep mothers and babies safe.
Yeah. Well, so we prosecuted, CQC prosecuted NUH last year, and it was the largest prosecution to date. We had to fight for that. Families shouldn't have to fight for that. And we raised concerns with the CQC with regards to Quinn's neonatal care, which we also told Donna. CQC failed to investigate that. They stopped at the time of birth of Quinn because they already met the threshold for unsafe care to prosecute. And that was last year. And what we saw in Donna's report today is the first time that I've actually seen that validated, that there should have been a neonatal expert and there should have been an investigation into neonatal care, but CQC failed us.
You'll know that what's happened after previous maternity reviews in terms of the improvements or non-improvements in the other previous trusts and government action as well, do you have any greater faith that Nottingham will improve, or that nationally care will improve following what you've been through, than what happened in Morecambe Bay and East Kent and Shrewsbury and Telford?
I think, as Donna said in her speech, she's going to ensure that these recommendations are implemented, and we as a group are not going to stop until they are. We need to ensure that this isn't a report that is there for people to choose whether they follow or not. These are critical recommendations that will make maternity services so much safer, so they have to be implemented, and we will continue working with the Secretary of State to ensure that is done.
Poppy Karonka from The Times. Very soon we have Baroness Amos's review into maternity care. The results will be about maternity care across the country. I know from previous statements that you think that that is not sufficient, some of you must, and that a public inquiry is still necessary apart from that. Do you mind just taking us through why a public inquiry is necessary on top of that review, and what that review may or may not do?
We are troubled by Baroness Amos's review for a variety of reasons, some of which is around who has managed to get in to be her review team, and we would suggest that some of those people would be witnesses in the public inquiry that we will get and will happen. We're worried about the superficial nature of it, and as I said earlier, the point of a public inquiry is to find out what happened, and we can't find out what happened by interviewing 12 chief executives of very troubled hospitals. So we have little confidence in Baroness Amos. It's not independent. It's commissioned by the same people who allowed Nottingham to happen. We need an independent, judge-led, courtroom, barrister-driven, emails available, public inquiry to answer those questions. What happened? Why did it happen? Who was responsible? And what do we do to stop it happening again? Nothing short of that will do.
We've said time and time again, the reports that you have into Nottingham and the past reports that you've had, they all, and the Amos report that's coming out, they all have the same thing. They don't look at the regulators, and the reality is they're failing the entire country, and until we can look at that, until there's a public inquiry that covers that, the situation isn't going to get any better. Maternity is not going to improve because there's no scrutiny on the regulators. There hasn't been any scrutiny on the regulators, and that's why there needs to be a public inquiry.
Just one point I want to add on that as well. We know that the Amos report and Donna Ockenden's report is actually within the terms of reference for the maternity task force, but it's okay coming up with a plan for the future to keep people safe and using those two reports to help you do that. But those two reports don't look at the regulators, as Sarah's just said, and that will remain a big safety concern that's not being looked at. They have failed to keep our families safe, and they will continue to put families in harm's way until they are made to stand up and account for their failure to recognise a maternity scandal after maternity scandal.
They also failed to offer to give us any accountability. So as Donna has said today, half of the senior leadership team didn't engage with the review. Half. So we're aware that a public inquiry is obviously a legal process in which people are compelled to come and will be talking under oath, so they should be speaking the truth. And then that gives us an opportunity to get true accountability, which at the moment we don't have.
Afternoon, Joel Moore from the Nottingham Post. open question to any of you, really. Obviously, you would have all been aware of a lot of the failings before the report. I was just wondering which aspects or themes struck you the most or took you most by surprise from Donna's findings?
I think for a lot of the families, there wasn't really anything that stood out massive. It was all stuff that we expected and the themes that we expected. It's just the validation of it, and the validation of what we've all been saying for so long is now in a report, and those themes are there that we've been saying for so long. So I don't think, for me, there was one that stood out any more than the others.
Could I, just add, possibly a pleasant surprise was the amount of staff, ground floor staff, that came forward to speak to Donna's team, because it's not an easy thing to do when you read about the toxic culture that they've been working within. So we are really, really, truly grateful to those staff, and we just want to say to them, please keep coming forward. We know it's not easy.
I was very struck by the strength of Donna's words when it came to describing the culture at NUH, and how condemning she was of that. And like Kimmy said, we really do recognise that there were good staff working in a bad environment, and they too are victims in this scandal. I was very struck by how far Donna went to condemn the bad staff working in a bad environment, and they must be held to account. Only accountability can incentivise that culture change, which is so desperately needed in maternity services.
Thanks, Sam Blanchard from The Sun. I wanted to ask, I guess it's kind of split into two groups of people, but how this whole experience has made you feel about the NHS and your views of the health service. For those of you that have worked in it, how your colleagues can have done these things, and for those of you who use it, how you feel watching your sort of friends and family and yourselves using it, and how that's changed.
It's difficult. My daughter survived, my daughter Caitlin. She was admitted to paediatric intensive care 13 times last year, and she's currently on intensive care as we speak. That's become normal to us. To most parents, that's the most horrific event of their lives. To us, it's Wednesday. So it's difficult. But there's no alternative. You just have to. You just have to hope that one day you're listened to, that one day the being dismissed, minimised, ignored, sidelined, stops, and that the perpetration, the perpetuation and the propagation of harm stops. And that's not easy.
I think for me, we dedicated our careers to the NHS. We worked at Nottingham, and when I was about to give birth, I thought, I'm going to trust my colleagues. My birth plan is, well, they know what they're doing. I'm low risk, just getting my healthy baby out alive. And then to be treated during my 6th day of labour like I was, I couldn't compute it. I couldn't, even as a senior clinician, get past the admissions phone line. And then after Harriet died, the cover-up was horrific, and we only knew that they were covering up because we knew the system. and that was really difficult. And then, to use the NHS, I had to use the NHS. I had an acute disc bulge. I went in, I was put in a side room, and the consultant said to me, "Oh, we don't treat people like you. Why don't you go to Derby?" So I was actually refused treatment. So it's really difficult, yeah.
This is where I'd say the ongoing harm continues, because what choice have you got but to engage with NHS? As a harmed mum, I have to regularly engage the NHS to keep up with my medical needs, but I have zero trust. I think most of us here don't trust doctors now. Going into any medical setting is re-traumatising, and I think when you need to go to a hospital, you need to go to doctors, that's when you're at your most vulnerable. And to not have that trust, to question everything they say, to go home and Google search and figure out whether or not they fobbed you off or they're treating you properly, is re-traumatising over and over again. But you don't have an option because we have the NHS.
I just want to ask you a question about accountability, and you've all used that word regarding staff that you've either come into contact with or that you've heard about. What does accountability look like to you?
Since our daughter was killed in 2019, not one single person has been held to account, and we always say we don't want people to be unnecessarily punished, but we want to know that they have been looked at, that the regulators have looked at their practice, and that they are actually safe to continue. And that's what's missing, and that's what accountability is to us. These people are still working within the NHS, and they've been allowed, many of them, to leave out the back door. A lot of them are now working in other positions within the NHS, such as maternity improvement roles, and they've never answered to anything that they did that allowed Nottingham to become so toxic. And even with Donna's review, a lot of the senior managers, they haven't been open and honest and spoken to the review. And I think for us, accountability isn't about unnecessarily punishing staff. It's just about knowing that they've been assessed and they are fit to practice and to continue working.
I would like some of the staff involved in Harriet's care and other people's care to be in court so that the country can decide what accountability looks like. Are you allowed to falsify records? Are you allowed to depart from proven national guidelines? Two simple questions that I've got an answer for, but that doesn't matter. We need the country to say, through the courts, that is okay. You're allowed to come off guidelines. You're allowed, but you're not allowed to falsify records. Because what we're describing, it's so normal for us to talk about things that are criminal in other walks of life. So let's test some of it in the court. Let's have a few test cases, and maybe that will make it easier for the really good people who want to flourish and grow and make the maternity department safe to do that, because we've called out the people who haven't done that.
Just one more thing to add to that. In the NHS, poor and dangerous care that leads to preventable harm is often, those individuals involved in that are often rewarded and moved around, promoted, allowed to move up into the echelons of, NHS management. And that is very perverse when you see the level of harm they're doing instead of actually answering. They're not even disciplined properly within a workplace discipline setting. I'm not talking about sending people to prison, although some of them should be, like Jack said, but it's just backwards. So, yeah.
Anna Whittaker from the BBC. Can I just ask about the Health Secretary's announcement this morning around Martha's Rule? Firstly, would it have changed anything in any of your cases to have that second opinion? And second of all, is there a worry from you that they are implementing Martha's Rule into maternity services instead of a public inquiry?
I'll answer the first bit to that. And in my case, it wouldn't have made a difference because I couldn't even get admitted. And I think one of the themes in Nottingham and in Winter's case as well is you're not being listened to in labour and you're told to stay at home. So from my perspective, it wouldn't have made a difference because I wasn't even allowed in.
I don't think in our case it would have made a difference to Caitlin's care either. Caitlin was already in an intensive care environment when she deteriorated, and that went undetected. And where do you escalate to from there?
I think for me as well, in Donna's report, she describes staff being frightened to use the call button, call the alarm. And I wonder if requesting kind of a second opinion, whether that's similar to that call alarm, whether senior midwives would look at the midwife and think that was a sign of weakness, so maybe it would have the kind of same outcome.
Hi, Sean Linton, Sunday Times. Coming back for a second go, sorry. I just want to ask you, throughout the years when I've interviewed some of you, we've talked about the issue of normal birth and that this was something that was pursued. Donna mentioned that this morning. It isn't in the report, so I just wondered if some of you could reflect on that. And then as a sort of follow-up to that, every time we have these scandals, there will be a debate that rages in midwifery, and we will see midwives who dismiss these concerns, who, you know, we saw a former president of the Royal College of Midwives on the radio recently saying some quite outrageous things. I wondered, as families who've gone through this, if you could maybe reflect on that, and maybe do you have a message to midwives out there who are working in this ideology, and do we need to be doing something about the way that midwives are being trained, educated and effectively put into this profession with a certain viewpoint?
I'm not going to answer the deeper parts of the question, but I think you've just put another witness down on our list of people for a public inquiry, because that's a question that we need to answer. Is it reasonable are those views reasonable, and do they cause harm?
Any more questions?
Obviously, we've not had the time to go through the full report with a fine-tooth comb, but we have had numerous conversations amongst us and with Donna. And throughout Donna's investigation into Nottingham, the natural birthing ideology is addressed in various parts of the report, possibly not as a standalone kind of title, but throughout it is definitely recognised and critiqued.
Do you have a message to midwives, though, who might be watching this and who are not from Nottingham, but they're part of the system?
I would just say, listen to the woman, listen to the family. I was denied a C-section. I had a C-section called and then withdrawn by a senior midwife. They shut down a doctor. They told me I'll be termed the next day and we'll make a plan then. So, yeah, I think it's a question for a public inquiry to determine whether that can cause harm. And, yeah.
This is for Jack and Sarah. We have met a lot over the last few years. We spoke about this day and how emotional and how hard it was going to be. You knew that you'd been failed. You fought for this review, just sitting in that room. What was it like to hear again, to get that validation that you were right, you weren't on your own, you weren't isolated?
I think you might just make me cry, Nancy. It's just, I just have this immense sense of anger, because if they'd listened to us in 2016, there would be so many people not in this room. I just can't compute, as a senior clinician, how they did this to us and how they did this to all these families. You know, and it's not just us, it's, you know, little Lottie's never going to get her sister back.
Would I be able to ask the same question to you, Gary and Sarah?
I think we always say this is, it's like the club that nobody wants to be in, but I couldn't think of better people to have been in. For years, the Trust isolated families. It made families feel like they were alone, like their baby's harm or the death was unavoidable. And actually finding other families for us was like a light, because suddenly you weren't alone. There was other people that understood the sheer pain and trauma that you were going through every day, and understand how hard it is to live in a world where everything is scary. And I think finding Sarah and Jack and then finding other families, it was a really big moment for us, and I think we couldn't have done it if we weren't together. We say all the time that we're stronger together and we're stronger as a team, and I don't think we would have got the review and we would be sitting here now if we hadn't all found each other.
I'll just add that one of the clinicians that visited us in the bereavement suite said that if we'd listened to every mother's concerns, we'd be overrun. And I think now I can respond to that and say, if you'd listened to every mother's concerns, there would be hundreds of mothers, babies, still alive, not brain injuries, lives would not have been destroyed. Had they listened to Jack and Sarah, Winter would be here, and her brother wouldn't be growing up looking at a gravestone.
Thank you. Is that all the questions? Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. I think it's important to probably say this is the first time that the families have all ever done any press together, which was one of the reasons why we wanted to do this conference, because they are literally such an amazing team and what they've achieved is incredible. So,
can I just add, I know we obviously did our statement at the beginning, but genuinely the media gave our children and mums who can't be here a voice, and without the platform that you offer to follow that story, we would not be here today.
Yeah.